Minnesota Vikings need to make this one move this offseason that could completely change the direction of the franchise. What's going on, everybody? My name is Patrick Siepman, and welcome in the Vikings Now by Chat Sports. Now, what is that move? It's Ohio State safety, Caleb Downs. The Vikings should do whatever it takes to draft Caleb Downs. Last night, I was watching a bunch of his film, watching a bunch of his individual play, and this guy completely blew me away. I always knew he was special from my time watching Ohio State over the last 2 years, even when he was a true freshman back at Bama. This guy was a playmaker, but when you actually go back and watch his tape, you go watch his film, this guy is an unbelievable player, and he will be a for sure star in the NFL. But I want to quickly get you guys' thoughts on this. Obviously, the safety and running back position don't normally get drafted too high in the NFL draft. So both these guys, the positional value, not necessarily up there with offensive tackles or edge rushers or quarterbacks, obviously. But if you had to pick one prospect for the Vikings to draft, Jeremiah Love or Caleb Downs, let me know who you would take. Give me a CD for Caleb Downs or give me a JL for Jeremiah Love. Now, immediately when I was thinking about the Vikings drafting Caleb Downs, I think back to Kwesi's first draft class when he completely whiffed on the opportunity to draft Kyle Hamilton. Now, the Vikings, if you guys remember, they were slated in there for pick number 12, ended up trading all the way back to pick number 32 with the Detroit Lions. Now, the Lions ended up taking Jameson Williams at the 12th overall pick, but the Vikings had a chance to take Kyle Hamilton, and then they took Lewis Seen instead, the safety out of Georgia. Ended up being a total bust. But after going back and watching Caleb Downs, there are some takeaways that I had. And number one, by far, he might be the best tackling prospect I've ever seen from a secondary player. Like, he's just got a great ability. When running backs are trying to get to perimeter, he'll just wrap them up around his ankles. He goes low every single time, and the running back will just fall flat on his face. Like, he is one of the best tacklers I've ever seen, and his instincts are fantastic. Like, he never gets kind of out of his own position, do the motions, or you never can really trick this guy into getting him out of position. He's just got fantastic instincts, and he's also a culture setter. Like Ohio State, obviously they already have a good culture, but he has been a big reason why that culture over the last couple of years has gone to another level. And we'll talk about that more in depth here coming up. But he also has a physical mentality. Like when a running back's hitting the lane, if he's not doing those typical ankle tackles, he is putting his shoulder into somebody, and he is hitting hard. And also, he's just an all-around football player. Like, if you go watch his tape, like, even back at Alabama, this guy was returning punts. He actually had a couple house calls that year. He has been, like, an unbelievable football player. Like, he's not just a good safety. He's not just, like, a good, nickel corner. He's a all-around really, really good football player. And, after watching his stuff, and I just think he is the best player in the 2026 draft class by far, that being Caleb Downs. And, I think this draft class is not as good as a couple of years in the past, and obviously the safety position is not a position you normally take high in the draft, but I think when you have a guy like Caleb Downs, and as special as I think he is going to be, I would be cool with the Vikings taking a risk and potentially trading up to the top 7 to draft a safety out of Ohio State. He is that special. He is going to be a generational prospect. I'll pound the table for this guy all offseason long, and he has been doing it at a high level even since he came into college football back in 2023. As a true freshman starting at Bama, he posted a great PFF grade. I mean, he's been consistent throughout all 3 seasons of him being a starter. Even back at Bama that freshman year, this guy was playing over 700 snaps for that defense. He was the backbone. He was a leader as a true freshman, but you guys see his PFF grades up on screen. Like, great in coverage, great in run defense, a great tackler, and just an overall great player. Now, I think the questions do become with Caleb Downs is how good he is in coverage. His stats are pretty good. Obviously, not going to blow you away, but has an interception each of his 3 seasons in college football. He's been targeted this year 36 times and only given up 23 receptions for 136 yards, which is fantastic production. Now, what I love about his coverage stats, though, is you guys see the improvement from his freshman year at Bama compared to the last 2 years at Ohio State, and he really had his coming out party. I remember in that Ohio State-Michigan game 2 seasons ago back in 2024, even though Ohio State lost that game, he completely dominated it on the defensive side of the field. And you know what? How about you do this guy a solid? How about you get Brian Flores, his guy, and go and be aggressive and go out there and get him a Caleb Downs? Because I promise you, if the Vikings were to draft Caleb Downs, he would be an all-pro player, number one, because of who he is and the natural talent he has, but also number 2, because of this madman right here, Brian Flores. Could you imagine Caleb Downs just taking on the Harrison Smith role? I think he could be as good as Harrison Smith was back in his prime. kind of similar physical profiles as well. Now, I think Caleb Downs is obviously a lot, physically more imposing than a guy like Harrison Smith, and that's saying something because Harry the Hitman was one of the most physically imposing safeties that we have seen over the last 10 years in the NFL. But I think he would be an obvious Flores pick. He's got a lot of versatility. He can play slot. He can play linebacker. He can even play some edge rusher, free safety, strong safety, any position Caleb Downs can play. And also, speaking about him being a culture setter, many Ohio State teammates and coaches rave about Downs being a culture setter, where they talk about him kind of being an old soul. That's been the quote thrown around about him, where he's just a veteran. He feels like a pro already at the college level. In Ohio State, I mean, one of the best defenses in college football. Yes, they have a lot of talent, like Arvell Reese. They got Sonny Styles, very good linebacker. Also got Cannon Curry, another good edge rusher. But I think the glue and the leader of that defense and why they are, not only like a great defense this year, but a potential all-time great unit is because of number 2, Caleb Downs. I cannot be higher on this guy. I think if the Vikings would be aggressive, potentially trade up for him, I think he would be a home run pick, no doubt about it. So we'll talk about more on Caleb Downs here in a second. But if you guys could, hit that subscribe button today. We'll keep you guys posted with everything you need to know around the Minnesota Vikings, and we're closing in here on 68,500 subscribers. So hit that subscribe button today. Just need 233 more of you guys to hit that sub button. Now, with the Vikings slotted at pick 13 right now in the NFL draft, I think it's unlikely that Caleb Downs would just fall to the Vikes. So I got Blockbuster trade for Minnesota coming up here in just a second. But before we do so, I got to tell you guys about today's presenting sponsor and one of my favorite sponsors, and that is Factor Meals. Now, if you guys want to eat smart, head over to factormeals.com/VikingsChat50off and plug in promo code VikingsChat50off to get 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 whole year. Now, eating well during the holidays can feel impossible. That's why I use Factor's chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals to help me stay balanced and energized throughout the most indulgent time of the year. Now, why I love Factor also is because they got a wide selection of weekly meal options, including some premium seafood choices like salmon and shrimp, and no extra cost. And covering the Minnesota Vikings here at Chat Sports, I live a busy lifestyle and don't always feel like making a home-cooked meal when I get off of work. That's where Factors came in and completely changed my life. So if you guys want, head over to factormeals.com/VikingsChat50off and plug in that promo code VikingsChat50off to get 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code VikingsChat50off at factormeals.com for 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. This exclusive holiday offer won't last, so lock in your savings before the new year rush, and this offer is only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. All right, let's talk more about how the Vikings can land Caleb Downs. Now, I will say, all of the mock draft experts out there, I think, are completely misevaluating this guy. I think there's no doubt he'll be drafted in the top 8. Like, there are some mock drafts. I think it was PFF that had Caleb Downs falling to the Vikings at pick 11 a couple weeks ago. I just think that's incredibly unlikely. This guy's an absolute stud. I think these GMs, especially if you're on the hot seat as a general manager and you want to go that safe pick, that prospect that you believe has the highest floor, that is Caleb Downs. And also, I say he's got an incredibly high floor. I also think he's got the highest ceiling in this year's draft class, hence why I think he's the best player in this draft class by a wide margin. And right now, the Vikings are slated to have the 13th overall pick in the draft. I think they're probably going to be around that 12 to 15 range when it's all said and done. But the draft order as it stands right now, you got the Giants, Raiders, Titans, Browns, and Jets in the top 5. And then the Cardinals, Saints, Commanders, Bengals, and the Rams, thanks to the Atlanta Falcons, round out the rest of the top 10. So you start looking around. Well, where could the Vikings trade up? Do they want to trade all the way up to 1, 2, or 3? Probably not. I think you could call up the Cleveland Browns and offer them a wide receiver. And that wide receiver being Jordan Addison. And I'm so curious what you guys have to say about this trade. I think the Browns would take this in a heartbeat. They only have to move down 9 spots, and you also get Jordan Addison. And also, this would give the Vikings some flexibility where you move off Addison. You can move up, get a superstar on a rookie deal, and then you can also put some faith in maybe a guy like Jalen Naylor stepping up being the wide receiver 2. A guy like Ty Felton stepping up being the wide receiver 3. I think this trade, even though it sounds crazy, like a blockbuster move, the 13th pick and Jordan Addison to trade up for Caleb Downs for a safety. It sounds nuts, but guys, generational safeties are hard to find. Like, how many great safeties do we have in the NFL? Kyle Hamilton? That's about it. Unless I'm missing a couple of guys, like, it is hard to find a generational safety, and he is just that. And for everybody, I can already see comments on today's show. Patrick, why would he spend the 4th overall pick on Caleb Downs? He's a safety. Well, if I told you that it would be a for sure lock that Caleb Downs would turn out to be Kyle Hamilton, would you do it? I think you would. Like, for the positional value camp, would you take Kyle Hamilton 4th overall? 100% you would. Like, this is a guy who can change a complete just culture of a defense, and he would fit right in with what Flores likes to do. I think this would be a home run pick. And the Vikings also just need a blue chipper in the secondary because right now they don't have one. I think you got some blue chippers on the defensive line. You don't have a blue chipper at the linebacking position, but you need another blue chipper defensively because offensively, like, you got Christian Darrisaw, you got Justin Jefferson, you got blue chippers there, but you don't have that true guy on defense that's young on a rookie contract. Caleb Downs would be just that. So I would do it. I would send Jordan Addison, pick number 13, trade up to pick number 4 and get Caleb Downs. Again, it would be a bold move, but I would at least really, really consider that if I was the Vikings front office. But if you guys made it to the end of today's show, hit me with a skull down below in the comments section. Appreciate all of you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time. As always, let's go Vikes.